everyone and welcome back to my channel. Now, as you may have seen in my most recent video, I had some surgery recently to get my tonsils removed. So I thought I would just do a quick video about my experience, just because I was somebody who was really nervous about getting this surgery done. So I thought that if other people are getting it done and they're nervous, then they might find this quite helpful. But also just to kind of share my experience for my own sake as well. Like, I can look at this video and kind of remember my experience more, because it was actually quite a positive experience. So just for a bit of background, when I was younger I got tonsillitis all the time. My tonsils were naturally very, very big. The doctors were always shocked whenever they looked in my throat and saw my tonsils because of how big they were naturally. And both my parents have had their tonsils removed, so I kind of always thought that I'd probably get mine removed. But when I was younger, I got tonsillitis so often and it was affecting my school life. And I went to the doctors about it every time, and each time they would say, oh, next time you get tonsillitis, we'll have the conversation about you getting them taken out. So it just seemed like I was always just short of getting them taken out. Now, I think this is mainly because it's a procedure that they don't really like doing anymore. There's not necessarily a lot of risk. They just don't do it as routinely anymore. But I suffered a lot when I was a child in school, just because at school there's so many germs going around and I just managed to get tonsillitis all the time. So that's kind of the background. And then I actually had a bit of a break from getting tonsillitis. When I went to university, I actually didn't end up getting tonsillitis very often at all. I still had, I think, like 1 or 2 spouts of it, but it wasn't happening like every month like it was before when I was in school. So I thought, oh, maybe I've got away with it and I'm just not going to end up getting tonsillitis anymore. I graduated in 2021 and I straight away moved on to a job in a nursery. Now, obviously, in a nursery, you're surrounded by children and there is constantly like germs and things going around. You basically have to build up your immune system so much to work in a place like a nursery or a school. So it started happening again where I was getting tonsillitis very, very often, and it was affecting my work quite badly. When I would get tonsillitis, it wouldn't just be a case of a sore throat. If you've had tonsillitis before, then you'll probably know how horrific it can be. But I always managed to get bacterial tonsillitis, which meant that I had white spots on the back of my throat. And as my tonsils were so large naturally anyway, when they'd enlarge even more, it was just horrific. It made it so difficult to eat or drink or even just swallow my own saliva, and it was so, so painful. And because I have fibromyalgia as well, which is a chronic pain and fatigue issue, I always had a flare-up of my fibromyalgia whenever that happened. If you'd like to see a video of me talking about fibromyalgia, then let me know, because it's something that I don't really see a lot of young people talk about. So every time I would get tonsillitis, I would end up flaring up and my health would just go downhill for a bit, and I would have to take time off work for every spout, which obviously wasn't very beneficial. And I would get it so often because children are always coming in with different germs and everything. So it got to the point where I was like, right, I need to get in contact with my doctors again. And I would let them know every time I had a flare-up of tonsillitis, and they'd give me antibiotics, and that would be that. It actually got to the point where they stopped seeing me and they just told me to send in a photo of what my tonsils looked like, and then they would give me antibiotics. So it just got to the point where I was getting a bit frustrated because I just felt so ill all the time, and I thought if they just took my tonsils out when I was a child, I wouldn't be struggling with this anymore. Now, whilst working at the nursery, I actually moved out of my family home into a house with my partner and my friend, and because I moved out of the area, I then had to sign up to a new doctor's surgery. So I signed up to the new surgery and I was letting them know about all my health conditions, and I let them know about my tonsils. And then I had another spurt of tonsillitis, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to just ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. So I sent them a picture of my tonsils as usual, and I said, look, I've been getting tonsillitis quite a lot. I had it a lot as a child, and I actually kept a log on my phone of how often I was getting tonsillitis. And I sent this log over and I said, can I please be considered for the tonsillectomy surgery? And literally straight away, I got a response saying, yes, you've had it a lot. I will refer you to the ENT department, which is the ear, nose and throat department if you don't know. And straight away, I just felt this vindication of like, somebody is listening to me. To be fair, this new surgery that I've moved to are absolutely amazing. They really listen to you. And I'm so glad that I moved there. So I had to wait a couple of months for this appointment, which is pretty standard, and I went and had an appointment with a surgeon in the ENT department. He straight away asked about my symptoms. I told him all my symptoms from when I get tonsillitis. I told him how often I'd been getting it, and he said, yep, that is enough for surgery. And he said, can I just have a look at your throat? I opened my mouth for 2 seconds and he looked at my throat and went, yep, you're getting them out. So he knew that they were very, very large, and he even drew like a little diagram of them, and I just found that really funny. But all in all, that appointment was probably about 5 minutes of him just saying, yep, you don't need to describe anymore, you're having them taken out, which was such a huge relief. So they weren't able to fit me in for a pre-op straight away, so I had to wait a couple of months until a pre-op appointment was ready. And at this pre-op appointment, it was actually super quick. I know that it's different for different people if you have different health issues, but for me, it was very quick. So I went to my pre-op appointment, and basically all that happened was I got my legs measured for stockings, which is what you get given for your surgery, just so you don't get any like blood clots or anything in your legs. They also took like my height, weight and blood pressure, and just asked me some generic questions about my health. Basically things such like what medications do you take, etc. And after that, that was it. That was all I needed to do for my pre-op, and they said, we will let you know when an operation date becomes available. So I did have to wait quite a few months, and to be fair, it wasn't that bad. I kind of just forgot about it for a while, and then an operation date came up, and I got a new food shop in ready with foods that, you know, I could eat after surgery and things like that. And then unfortunately, a couple of days before, I got a call saying that the surgeon was ill, so they had to cancel. I was obviously quite disappointed, especially because this appointment date was meant to be 2 weeks before I saw Taylor Swift. So I thought, perfect, it's right before I see Taylor, I'm gonna be well enough for when I see her. In hindsight, I'm quite glad that I didn't have the operation on that date, because it took me a bit longer to recover than I thought. So then they basically said, are there any dates that you can't do? And then I said, well, I'm going away, which was true. I was going away, but just to see Taylor Swift. I said, I'm going away on these dates, so it will have to be after that, because I wasn't letting the surgery get in the way of me seeing Taylor Swift live. And it actually took until the 8th of July for them to have another appointment. I just realised I'm actually filming this exactly a month after I had the surgery, which is quite interesting. So all the food that I could save that I got from that previous food shop, I saved, ready for the day I actually had my surgery, which was the 8th of July. When I talk about the food shop that I did, I basically mean I got stuff like noodles, soups, ice cream, things that were easier to eat, but they do recommend that you don't change your diet too much. So I had that for the times where I really struggled to eat, but also made sure to eat other things like toast, which is horrible to eat, but it is needed for the recovery process. So on the morning of my surgery, I wasn't allowed to eat anything. I was told to get to the hospital for 7:30 in the morning, and I actually live right near my local hospital, so that was really beneficial. So I ate something late the night before and just took little sips of water until I got admitted into the hospital, and then they basically allowed me to have a little sip of water each hour leading up to the surgery. I was really concerned that I would be waiting there for a very long time, but actually it took maybe like 20 minutes before they called my name and I got taken to this room. Now, my partner was allowed to come with me, which was a huge relief because I was so anxious. This is the first surgery I've ever had, and I just was feeling really anxious about it. It didn't help the fact that I was reading a lot of documents on the surgery the night before, and I read about this thing called awareness, which is when you get put under general anaesthetic and you're actually still awake but you look asleep, so then the surgeons can't tell that you're actually not asleep and you feel everything. And when I heard that that was a thing, even though it's so rare, it freaked me out. So I get into this room and there's actually two other patients as well, but we are divided by curtains and we just get to sit down on a seat and wait for the professionals to see us. It kind of worked in a circuit. We got seen by a general nurse, by the anaesthetist and by the surgeon. So the nurse just came and basically confirmed lots of our different things, like medications we're on, who we are, what surgery we were here for basically, and gave us the stocking and the gown to put on. Then I got seen by the anaesthetist and she was honestly the most lovely person I think I've ever met. She reassured me so much. She basically took me through everything because I've never had a general anaesthetic before. I've had local anaesthetic where they just inject you in the area where you're getting something done, but I've never had general anaesthetic, so I was quite nervous. And she did mention the awareness, and she said about how really rare it is, but also they've got this new piece of equipment where they put a strip on your head and they can actually monitor what's going on in your brain to tell if you're asleep or not, and that reassured me so much. So she basically just went through all the information regarding the anaesthetic, and basically explained that I would have a little injection in my arm and then she'd be stood behind me, I'd have a mask over me, and then I would gradually feel quite woozy and fall asleep, and also have the strip on my head. So it was nice to kind of be run through that before it actually happening, because it is quite a scary experience, especially when you've never had that done before. And then the surgeon came to see me and he recognised me and my partner from the appointment, and he basically just confirmed everything and asked if I had any questions. It was really nice to have 3 different staff members basically come and reassure you and just make sure that everything's all right and answer any questions, and I felt really relieved. And when the surgeon came to me, he said, "You're second on my list today, so you should be in surgery around 10 o'clock." I got to the hospital for 7:30 and I was so happy that I was already going to be at surgery at 10 o'clock. I expected this to be a really long process that would drag out throughout the day. But yeah, I was sat in this room for a little while just talking to my partner, and after I'd spoken to all of the professionals, they asked if we would take a seat back out in like the main waiting area. And by this time, it was already 9 o'clock. One of the people with me actually had already gone to surgery. So I only had an hour to wait, and that was probably the worst part of it because that's when I started to get quite anxious, and also I was just really tired. But then it came to about 9:45 and my name was called. I said goodbye to my partner and he went off to basically just get some food and chill for a bit. And yeah, I went off with the nurse. And basically what happens is you are questioned so many times on who you are and what surgery you're getting and if you have any allergies, just to make sure that nothing gets messed up. And I think that is such a good system. So when the nurse came and collected me, we went off to a separate room and she just confirmed all these details. And then she walked me down to the theatre, and basically I was in this room, which is right before the theatre. It's a room connected to the theatre, and I was taken in there. I was told to lie on the bed whilst I basically got hooked up to things like the blood pressure monitor and things like that. And again, another staff member came and asked me the same questions of like who I am, what allergies do I have, and what surgery am I here for. And then once they were ready, I got wheeled in on the bed into the main surgery room. Now, when this happened, the anaesthetist came in and straight away she just relieved me. I was hooked up to this heart monitor thing and I could see that my heart rate was through the roof because I was so anxious. And she just came in and went, "Whoa, that's a heart rate and a half," which just made me laugh. I was like, "Yeah, can you tell I'm nervous?" And she straight away just relieved me. I could literally feel my heart rate going down and I could see it on the monitor, so that was nice. And she again asked me the same questions. She ran through my allergies and everything, and she even said to the other people in the room, "We know that Charlotte's got big tonsils, so can we get this ready?" I don't know what this was. It was some kind of medical term that I've not heard of, but they had to get something else ready because I have big tonsils, so that was interesting. And she basically ran me through the process again of what was going to happen with like the injection in my hand, the mask and me feeling woozy. So then at that point, another medical professional came over and they applied the strip to my head. And this felt quite weird because it was a little bit spiky, but it didn't hurt. And it was just placed on my head. And as soon as that was on my head, I was relieved even more that, that was all happening. And then I had the injection in my hand. Hand injections are quite painful, but I have a lot of blood tests and injections done quite a lot, so I wasn't too worried about it, and it actually wasn't too painful. And yeah, that was basically the anesthetic going in. She took her place behind me and she put the mask over my face. This was the point that I was most nervous about, basically because when I was younger I was admitted to hospital with a really bad chest infection, and I can't remember a lot from it, but the one thing I do remember is them basically putting an oxygen mask over me. And because I'm incredibly claustrophobic, I started to panic, and I just remember crying and hyperventilating and my parents trying to tell me to calm down because I needed to have this oxygen. So I've not actually had to have a mask over my face since that time, and it just kind of took me back to that time, and it just stressed me out a bit, but it wasn't too bad. I was just able to have it over me and think, right, this is just what I need to do. I just need to take deep breaths. So at the beginning I was breathing a bit too frequently, not full on hyperventilating, but breathing a bit too quickly, and she was just saying, right, slow deep breaths, it's okay. And just hearing that reassured me so much. And I started to feel a little bit woozy. It basically just feels like you're out of it. You just, in a way, you feel a bit drunk, but yeah, you just feel nice and sleepy. I really enjoyed that feeling. At first I was like, oh, I can't control how I'm feeling, this is weird. But then I actually just felt quite relaxed, which was nice. And I just remember her saying, yeah, you're gonna go to sleep now, it's all okay, you're safe. And that was just really reassuring. So yeah, the last thing I remembered was feeling really woozy, and then yeah, I was clearly unconscious. So I went into surgery at 9:45. By the time I actually had the anaesthetic and everything put through, it was probably closer to 10 o'clock. And I woke up after the surgery at 11:15, so it was very, very quick. What I remember after I woke up was I was basically asleep, and all I hear is, Charlotte, Charlotte, and I was like, what is going on? And then I woke up, and straight away, as soon as I woke up, I just felt the pain in my throat, and I was like, okay, I know what's happened. I've woken up after my surgery. Straight away, I was aware of where I was. I looked at the time and I was like, okay, the surgery's done. I've done it. I didn't wake up through it. It's all fine. It's all going well. I had this nurse next to me basically saying, how are you feeling? And I was like, okay. Struggled to talk a little bit, and I was like, okay, this throat pain isn't too bad, but it's definitely there. She gave me a drink of water through a straw, which I was able to drink quite easily, and she took my blood pressure and basically just made sure that I was okay. Then I was moved into another recovery room where I was then handed over to a different nurse who would basically be observing me for 4 hours. So yeah, after the surgery I had to be observed for 4 hours before I can go home, and they basically just had to make sure that all my vitals were okay and that I would eat and drink something before I went home. So at this point all I wanted to do was sleep, but they just had to basically do more blood pressure checks and everything, so I had to stay awake just for a tiny bit to be able to do that. And then the nurse said, do you want something to eat? We've got sandwiches or biscuits. The last thing I wanted to do was eat, but I knew from talking to my parents who have had their tonsils out that they will not let you go until you eat. So I thought, if I just eat something now, just something small, then I've proved that I can do that. So I asked for a glass of water and just some biscuits, just something small. And I literally remember it taking me so long to eat these biscuits. I picked some little shortbread biscuits and I just took small bites and just let it dissolve in my mouth and then swallowed it. It wasn't too hard to eat, to be fair. I was quite shocked, but obviously I still had probably lots of painkillers and things going through me. Then at that point my partner came in and he basically was just checking that I was okay. He was like, well, you're looking all right, you're looking well. I was like, yeah, I didn't look well. I looked at the photos. I took some photos of me after surgery, just putting my thumbs up, and I just look completely out of it. But yeah, he thought I was going to be worse than I was, but yeah, it wasn't too bad. He stayed with me whilst I ate the biscuits, and I said, just go home, I've got to be here for 4 hours, I'm just going to try and sleep anyway. I brought a book with me, so you know, I was going to be fine. And then when he left, I just decided to try and get some sleep, and I was actually able to get some sleep, which was nice. Then after I woke up, I actually didn't have too long left of my observation period. I was gradually starting to feel quite a bit of pain now, but it wasn't too bad. I just felt like I just wanted to go home and rest. And at this point I decided to try and read for a bit, but there was quite a loud nurse who was complaining about things, and I find it quite hard to concentrate on reading while somebody else is talking, so I wasn't really able to concentrate on what I was reading. So I ended up just going on my phone and just messaging a load of people, and that kind of kept me going for the last bit. Then as it got closer to the time of my discharge, my nurse kept coming to me and going like, oh, half an hour to go, oh, 15 minutes to go. She was just helping me count it down, which I found really nice and funny. My partner came back, and we basically just talked to the nurse about the recovery process and how he basically had to sign to say that he was helping me get home and that he was going to look after me for at least 24 hours. Because of like the medication that you've been put on, you're not supposed to drive or make any like big decisions, and you're supposed to have somebody watch over you just in case of any adverse side effects, but luckily I didn't experience any of that. So he signed to say that he understood all of that. The nurse then came over and gave me some paracetamol, some morphine, and also this disgusting drink. It's meant to basically provide you with electrolytes, and I had to drink 2 sachets in 1 cup of water at midday every day for 7 days, and that was literally the worst part of my day. But so she gave me that, and then we just counted down the last 5 minutes and then I could leave. So I got to hospital at 7:30 in the morning, and I got home I think just before 4 o'clock, just before 3 o'clock it was actually. So that was really good. I've had shifts that are longer than that. So I got home, and my housemate was there being all supportive, and I talked a little bit about my experience as much as I could. Obviously it was a little bit of a struggle to talk, but it wasn't too bad. I actually felt like on that first day I wasn't feeling too bad, and I thought, oh, if this is what the recovery is like, then that's not going to be too bad. I stayed up for a little bit to talk about my experience, and then I went to bed because I was so tired. And that was kind of it on the first day. I did wake up a bit after, and I think I had some carrot and coriander soup. I think that's what I had. But they did say that one of the side effects is that your taste could temporarily change, and I usually really like carrot and coriander soup, but I thought it was the most disgusting thing ever when I had it for tea that night, which was really sad because I had been looking forward to it for ages. But yeah, I just did not like it at all, so my taste buds clearly changed. So I ended up having something else instead. I think it was just a mash and gravy or something, but that hit the spot. So it was strange how my taste did change quite a bit. So then I woke up the next day, and I had to have that drink for the first time, and it was absolutely awful. It made me feel quite sick, that's how disgusting it was. And I let my partner and my housemate have a taste of it because it was only electrolytes, it wasn't like any like specific hard medication or anything. I let them have a taste of it, and both of them were like, yeah, that's disgusting, and they're a lot less fussy than I am. My housemate actually said it tasted like drinking orange flavoured seawater, which, yeah, it was just disgusting. I was not a fan of that drink, but I did drink it because I knew that it would be the best thing to do to make sure that, you know, I was healing and recovering well. The pain wasn't too bad on the first day. I was just mainly really tired. I took the doctor's advice in basically making sure that I had pain medication half an hour before I ate to make sure that it was easier for me to eat. I actually didn't find eating that challenging. I thought I would find it challenging because when I had really bad cases of tonsillitis, I'd find it really challenging to eat and drink. But I think the reason why I didn't find it that challenging was because when you have tonsillitis, you obviously have these inflamed tonsils in the back of your throat that when you eat, you know, it interferes with your tonsils, it hits your tonsils and causes that pain, and then swallowing is just a whole other thing. But because those tonsils have now been removed and the back of your throat is basically bare, there's nothing there for it to get stuck on. So eating wasn't actually too bad. It was just swallowing with the pain of, obviously, like, because they burn the back of your throat, is basically the pain of swallowing, but it wasn't too bad, especially when I'd taken pain medication beforehand. The main thing was that I just felt extremely tired, and I knew that this was going to be a thing anyway. The anaesthetist did say, oh, you've got fibromyalgia, just to let you know, it may cause like a flare-up of your symptoms, having like a surgery like this. And I said that I was pretty prepared for that anyway. It tends to happen whenever I get ill, my fibro flares up in one way or another. But the fatigue hit me like a ton of bricks. It was probably also mainly due to the morphine as well. But yeah, my fatigue was awful. My routine was basically to get up at a reasonable time, like 10 a.m, and then be awake for a couple of hours, like after just gone lunch. And then just after lunch, I would have a nap until pretty much late afternoon, and then be up, have tea, socialise with my housemate and my partner, and then go back to bed. So that was kind of my routine for the whole 2-week recovery period. So I found that the first couple of days wasn't too bad, and then the couple of days after that were probably the worst. This is because I started to get quite intense ear pain. They did say that this was a common side effect, because, you know, the ear, nose and throat are all connected. Yeah, I got quite intense ear pain, and the only thing that I can kind of relate it to is when you're on a plane and you get that ear pain, but it's not like as if it's about to pop, it's just that constant pain. And that was probably the worst thing about my recovery. I have problems with my ears anyway. Each time I fly, I get really intense pain that then radiates up to my head. And I did talk to the surgeon about it, the ENT surgeon, and he basically said that unfortunately some people just have that issue. He did look at my ears and say that he can tell that they've been perforated from flying before. I did have one occasion where this ear actually like bled, because of the pressure when I was flying. So I do tend to have issues with my ears anyway. I get quite a lot of dizziness. I used to get ear infections quite a bit as a child, so I do have ear problems as it is, so I wasn't surprised that I was somebody who was going to get the side effect of painful ears. That was probably the worst thing, and the one thing that really helped me was chewing gum. My housemate actually came home from work one day and she had got me 2 different packs of chewing gum and this Milky Bar mousse, which honestly was the best thing. It was tasting nice because a lot of my taste buds had changed. It tasted nice but also just soothed my throat, so that was really nice. And then the chewing gum, the actual motion of chewing really helped my ears. I'm not quite sure why, but that was something that was recommended by the doctor. So I'm really glad that I knew that because that helped me out a lot. The other thing I did was I have this pack which you can either put in the freezer and it be cold, or heat it up in the microwave and it be warm, and I would just press that against my ears. I'd put the cold against my throat here and I'd put the heat against my ears, and that really helped to kind of soothe everything as well. So overall the recovery process wasn't too bad. I was knocked out a lot more than I thought I would be. I was hoping that I would be able to take this time to do quite a bit of coursework and do a lot of reading, and that was quite naive, really, because I was recovering from having surgery where I'd had general anesthetic, so I don't know why I was so naive, but I actually really did just need those 2 weeks to rest. But luckily after the 2 weeks I did feel much better. My throat still needed a bit of warming up. I actually went back to work in the nursery the day after the 2 weeks, and it took quite a bit to warm up my voice, and when I had to raise my voice sometimes it did hurt a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. It just wasn't too bad of a recovery process. It just took a lot more out of me than I thought it would, and it made me realise how important rest is. if you've seen my shorts series of trying to make my friend a Swiftie, then you'll be able to tell how my voice kind of develops in the recovery process, because I literally filmed that daily throughout the recovery process. So even on the day I had the surgery, you can hear it, and also in the days after that, you can kind of hear how my voice is recovering from that. I actually think I sound better on the surgery day than in some of the days after that, just because I had good and bad days really. But yeah, I find it so interesting to look back at those shorts and see how I sounded. My housemate and my partner were saying about how funny it was that I was so quiet for 2 weeks. One thing I did do during the recovery process, and I would not recommend this, is the day after surgery, I actually went to my counselling session as normal, mainly because I didn't want to lose my space, because it's quite a specialised counselling service that's run by a charity, and I didn't want to lose my space on it. So I still went to the appointment even though I was struggling to talk and I was clearly very tired. And when my counsellor saw me, she was like, "Oh my goodness, how are you here?" And she said, "If at any point you need to leave and you need to just go home and rest, that is fine." But I somehow made it through. I spoke for the full hour, but I wouldn't recommend it because I then just was completely out of it for the rest of the day. I would, give your voice and your body the time it needs to rest. I still went to my counselling sessions weekly. I cannot believe I did it the day after the surgery, but I did. You're not actually supposed to really go out anywhere for those 2 weeks, because if you were to pick up some sort of like germs or illness, then that could cause complications. So I really shouldn't have got on public transport to then go to this appointment, but I did it and luckily I was okay, but I would not recommend doing that. But that was literally the only thing I did in the 2 weeks. Other than that, I did not leave the house other than to just go for a walk around the block. It was quite nice to just rest for 2 weeks and not really do anything. So I think that pretty much covers everything. If you've got any questions, then feel free to put them in the comments. But honestly, it was a really positive experience. The fact that I was in and out so quickly and all the staff members were lovely, it was just really good. They are such an asset to the NHS, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to, have this surgery done for free, because it has greatly improved my quality of life already. The fact that I'm now not going to get tonsillitis because my tonsils are completely gone, I decided to go with the surgery that completely got rid of them. You can have a surgery where you just shave off part of them, but then they can grow back. But because of my issues that I've had with them, I decided to just get them completely removed, which was a more painful recovery process. But it was definitely worth it to know that I'm not going to get tonsillitis anymore. I'm so grateful that I was able to have this surgery for free. I was saying to my friends, like, even eating and drinking, that it's not hitting my tonsils. Usually it would hit my tonsils because they're that big, but now it can just go straight down. Taking my meds is a whole different thing, and taking medication, it's just able to go down so easy without getting like stuck on my tonsil and then coming back. Like, it was just such a horrible process, but now it just goes down easily. So even with that, that's already improved. I'm still obviously going to get sore throats like any normal person does. I'll still get sore throats, but not having tonsillitis is going to be something that really, really impacts my life for the better. But let me know as well if you've had your tonsils out and if your experience was similar to mine. One of my friends has had her tonsils out and hers was slightly different, but she had them out during COVID, so it's bound to be slightly different. I just think I was very lucky that I had lovely staff members, that I was in and out quickly, that my partner could be there for the majority of it, and that luckily my partner was able to look after me, and my housemate as well. They were looking after me for the 2 weeks, making sure that I was okay. And yeah, it was just a really positive experience, although obviously it was quite painful at times. It was a positive experience, and I'm so glad that I did it. But yeah, that basically wraps everything up in this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you later.